Well, howdy, everyone. Once again, welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. And we'll probably talk a little bit about all of that today as we go forward. Our guest is William Joseph Hill. He said I could call him William as long as I didn't call him late for dinner. I know that joke. Anyway, we are really glad you're here, William. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited.
Well, and let me tell you a little bit about William, at least a little bit. He is a SAG-AFTRA actor, a filmmaker, a writer, and he's a producer. He now lives in the Los Angeles area, but he grew up in San Diego and Hawaii and out on Ford Island where Pearl Harbor is located. So that's kind of interesting. At least it was at the right time and you didn't get bombed out. But anyway, welcome again to Unstoppable Mindset. I'm glad that you're here. So are you from San Diego originally?
Well, originally I was born in Rhode Island, but as a Navy brat, as soon as I was born, within 4 months, my dad got stationed, I think in Long Beach or something. Or he was stationed in San Diego. So we moved around a lot in Southern California. So it was Chula Vista, Huntington Beach, San Diego. And then my dad, when he made captain, we got transferred to Hawaii and we managed to stay there for a whole decade. So wow. I always say I pretty much grew up in Hawaii because from age 12 to 22, that was my Hawaii years.
How was he able to stay in one place for 10 years?
I asked him that once. He said, well, he never really wanted to push for admiral. And I think there's a lot of other officers that were looking for more upward mobility. And my dad, he always said he preferred being a line officer. He loved being at sea. And I guess once he made captain, it was like, you don't get sent out to sea because you're too valuable. So they stick you in the headquarters to kind of like plan things. So he figured, well, there's nowhere to go. And he liked Hawaii. And we had a wonderful 5-bedroom house that was built in 1923. So our house was actually standing when the 1941 attack happened.
And it stayed.
You didn't lose it. Wow. It was a surgical attack. And it's just like, clearly, like a lot of this, the housing was not hit. It was just like they hit their targets. And it was very tragic and sad in that, but it was very well planned in that respect.
Yeah. Well, and, understandably, and it is part of history, as we know. I collect old radio shows as a hobby, so it's interesting to go back and listen to some of the radio broadcasts from around that time, not only of the actual attack, but the things after it and so on.
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting just overall to hear how radio really helped in the war effort. And I don't even know how, I'm sure there was opposition to the war and all that, but radio and so many different sources pushed so hard to help keep the country much more unified than it might have been, which it did. And that was I think, a very good thing. And that helped the whole process.
Yeah, I think so. I like to listen to a lot of history podcasts, and my dad was a big history buff. He loved the Civil War area, and I'm more like 20th century type of history because it's fascinating. A lot of the technology that we deal with now kind of got its origins in 20th century development in that, and especially old Hollywood or even like World War II, and kind of like how FDR started with his fireside chats, which I think helped connect with, the American population back then.
Oh, they did. The fireside chats definitely did. And he understood that and wanted to communicate with the whole country and with everyone. And he did a good job of doing that as kind of they went forward. So that's pretty cool. Well, tell us a little bit about the early William growing up. It's always a good place to start.
Yeah. Okay. Early William growing up, he loved, so my mom and dad, this is interesting because the more I look back at my history, the more I'm like, oh, okay, no wonder I'm this way. My mom and dad always liked movies. My dad loved John Wayne, loved Western. So that was his genre. My mom liked musicals. Dad liked some of the musicals, like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers or Calamity Jane. Like if it was a Western themed musical, Dad loved it. South Pacific, yeah, I guess because it's got a little bit of Navy and that stuff. But so I learned about kind of movies just through osmosis, and it wasn't until my mom took us to see Star Wars the original, when it first came out on the big screen, and we were a little late to the party. Like, it had come out the prior May, and it wasn't until fall, that following fall, and my uncle Vince, who was my dad's youngest brother, he was in his 20s at the time. He was visiting, and he was talking to my mom while me and my sister and my brothers were playing baseball in the backyard, and he goes, "Judy, you got to take the kids to see Star Wars." And so we come back in, and my mom's like, "Kids, we're going to Star Wars." And I'm like cheering because I kept bugging her, "When are we going to see it?" She's like, And the reason why she didn't want to take us at first was because, being very young, we couldn't sit through a 2-hour movie. Like, the best I could do is Disney animation. She tried to take us to like Disney live action, but we were very restless and couldn't sit still. So, but this turned out to be, it was a good choice for my first live action movie. And then I guess, like, so that movie just like changed my life. It made me start to get interested in how do they do all that magical stuff. And then I gradually came to the realization that this is what people did for a living. And I was kind of like, well, I want to do that for a living. And I started falling into wanting to become a filmmaker. So before we moved to Hawaii, I was making plans as to, like, I'm going to be a filmmaker like George Lucas, but then I'm going to be in the movie too, like Mark Hamill. And so I'd be like, make my own Star Wars movies, but being in it, or using it like stop motion with my Star Wars figures. That was my big dream when I was 11. I was going to do a stop motion movie of The Empire Strikes Back, hand animating my action figures who have no elbows and no knees, which would have been interesting motion if my mom had let me borrow the camera then.
Yeah. Well, I remember going to see the original Star Wars too, and I didn't know anything about it, but people wanted to go. I was in Iowa at the time, working on a project, and we went to see it, and I loved it. And I especially enjoyed the first three. I still think those are the best of the series, but they're all kind of fun. But yeah, the original three, and I got to appreciate James Earl Jones, and I actually saw him live on stage once in New York. He played Othello.
Oh, wow.
He played opposite Christopher Plummer. You want to talk about two incredible people.
Oh, yeah.
And they did such a wonderful job. That is still one of my favorite plays of all time. That was just really great. But I have to admit, I kept sitting waiting for Othello to say, "Iago, I am your father." But
right, I know, right?
But it never happened. That's fine. But I enjoyed it, and it was fun. So I can tell where you're coming from. What's your favorite movie of all time?
My favorite movie of all time, I would have to say, is The Empire Strikes Back, the second one out of those. And it was because that was what they had, the visual. They had a on TV, they had a visual effects show that kind of showed all the visual effects and how they did them, even more so than the original. And that was when I started to lock in, like, oh, okay, this is going to be my career. So, but I have other favorite movies. I mean, I'm a martial artist too. So of course, all of Bruce Lee's movies. Jackie Chan is a big influence on what I do. And Indiana Jones, I think, is one of the most perfect, especially Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of the most perfectly constructed screenplays and movies ever. And the only other one that comes close to being that perfect is Die Hard, in my opinion, the original, which was fantastic.
Well, kind of my favorite movie of all time, and that's just kind of where I come from, is still Casablanca. That's just hard to beat all the way around. Partly Humphrey Bogart, but it's a great movie in every sense of the word. But I appreciate where you're coming from, especially because your orientation is a lot more with the visual effects and so on. So I agree. Raiders of the Lost Ark is certainly one of my top movies as well. I think that you're right. It is definitely a movie that was made so well. And is better than any of the other indie movies. Now I've seen them all, and I like them, but Raiders of the Lost Ark is still the best.
It is. It is. And in fact, it was my dad's favorite, like George Lucas Spielberg, Diz Raiders, because it was like he grew up with those kind of serials, and he grew up with, and Indy is a lot like, I would say he's like John Wayne, but vulnerable. And that's, I think, what separates him from like the James Bond, the Superman, and that is just like, he's just an everyman who can barely get by, but he manages to eke out a triumph in the end, which I think that's kind of like how I like to write my heroes as well.
Yeah. Sort of like going a different direction, Harry Potter in the end, which is so interesting because he started out by being a kid who was just so downtrodden, and look what he did.
Yes. It's a wonderful arc.
She wrote some really good books.
Yeah.
So you moved to Hawaii when you were around 12. And so did high school and everything there. And then where did you do college?
College was in Hawaii as well. So, and I always tell people, like, I literally lived in Hawaii for 10 years. We moved to Hawaii on my 12th birthday, and we moved back to San Diego on my 22nd. So I actually, although the flight was delayed a little bit, but that's just technical. So it was like a little bit later, but yeah, it's basically literally 10 years. And so college, I did Chaminade University of Honolulu because what I really wanted to do was to go to USC Film School. And my mom was like, well, that's in California and that's really expensive because it's a private school. And if you could get like a scholarship, great. But she's like, I didn't want you to rely 100% on film. My parents wanted me to get a degree in something that could translate. So I'm like, okay, well, what could translate to other industries other than business? So I got my degree in business. So I learned a little bit about entrepreneurship, management, communications, marketing, all the business related stuff to make them happy. But I was basically like, I just want to get to Hollywood.
Well, and a business degree couldn't hurt in Hollywood.
No, yeah, it's very useful actually.
Some of my friends who also are very interested in old radio and I talk a lot about the people who were in old radio who did do business well, who didn't do business well, the ones who were very successful, the ones who never really had an act of or a proclivity for doing business well, and as a result suffered. But some did, so that was okay.
Yeah, it helps. My father and my brothers, my one brother, Brendan, he's an electrical engineer. My dad was an engineer. My uncles were all engineers, and they all went to Villanova. So I was not, engineering is not my thing. It's interesting. I find myself watching a lot of science YouTube and physics YouTube and stuff like that now. I can understand it more. But in my youth, I was like, that's way over my head.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can learn it if you need to.
Right.
So did the whole family move back to California on your 22nd birthday?
Yes, we did. My dad had retired and it was kind of like the Navy will only let you stay in for so long unless you're like, in the Pentagon or, working politically in DC, and he had no desire for any kind of political appointment. So it was like, retired, stayed in as long as he could. We had bought the house. My parents bought the house wisely, in our very, very young years. So we had a house to go back to. And basically I was like going, okay, well, it's going to be easier for me to get to Los Angeles from San Diego than it would be from Honolulu.
It would be.
Yeah, because I could take my car, so that's what I did.
Or the 405.
Right up the 5 to the 405, so that was my plan. Was like, okay, I'll start working down in San Diego, and then gradually find my way up to LA.
How long did that take?
It took a few years.
Really?
Yeah, because you got to save up your money if you want to live in LA. You got to save up your money. And this was like in the 90s. So this was like the late 90s. And at the time, they were finishing a lot of construction on the 5.
Yeah.
So it would always, and before then, I would take acting classes up here in LA. I would drive from San Diego. I had a friend who kind of like, he got us hooked up with our acting coach, Bruce Glover, who's Crispin Glover's father. He used to he's passed away now, but he used to have a workshop that he would just teach out of his house. He'd have private students and stuff like that. And he used to advertise in Dramalog. And my friend saw his ad and goes, "Oh my God, Bruce Glover, we got to take from him." And he's the guy from Diamonds Are Forever. And then, so I was like, so he knew more about Bruce at the time than I did. And he became my coach. So I would drive up here every Tuesday. Me and my friend would drive up through rush hour traffic in the afternoon, and then we'd stay, and then we get home by 2 a.m. in San Diego, and then like 4 hours later, I had to get up and go to work. So it was, but you know, at that age, it's like you do whatever it takes.
Right. So you eventually moved up to LA and Hollywood. Is that where when you met your wife?
Yes. So I had been up here for a couple of years, and my wife was part of this actor group. So there was this gal that I did, another actress, who was my leading lady in my very first Los Angeles theater play. It was a debut. The writer of the play worked at the Hollywood Reporter, and it was like his big world premiere, and I was the lead, and she was my leading lady, and we stayed friends after the show, and she kept telling me, "Oh, there's this murder mystery group that we belong to, and we have this actors group that we meet on Sundays for. You got to come, you got to come." And I was like, okay, because I was involved with another theater company that was literally like down the street from me that I could walk to. So I was like, well, I can walk here. But eventually I was like, I need to meet new people. And at the time I had started writing Cyber Fighter. So I had my first draft, and I'm like, I should do a reading. So I came to the group one Sunday, and Pamela showed up late. I guess she was stuck in traffic. And so she made, which was great because she made quite an impression. It was love at first sight. She walks through the door, and I'm like, oh, who's that? So as an actor / writer, your pickup line is, hey, would you mind reading my stage directions for... Because the female character hadn't come in the pages that I brought. So they always let you bring, 10, 15 pages to read and to give people. So, and it got a really good response. So I'm like, okay, I think this movie idea has a little something for it. But that's how we met.
And the two of you formed a company, right?
Yeah, we did. After we started dating, Pamela's brother, he was an astrologer, and so he would do our birth charts. And then he took our birth charts and combined them, and he said, "Oh, you guys have 4 major planets in the constellation Scorpio. This is really powerful." So that stuck with me, and eventually I said, "Hey, I have an idea. We're going to do a production company. Why don't we call it 4 Scorpio Productions?" And she loved it because it's got that astrology thing, and Pamela's really big on astrology, and she would tell you that right now Mercury's in retrograde, so that would explain a lot of miscommunications and things. If you're suffering that right now, it's because Mercury's in retrograde until March 20th. So, yeah.
I've been okay communications-wise, so I won't worry about it.
That's good.
Yeah. But I hear you. So 4 Scorpio Productions, and what did you guys do with that company?
We started for a few years. It was like our acting careers were kind of like going in different directions. Like we were busy with other projects, or we'd get cast in a lot of indie films and things. So it was always on the back burner. And then I think around 2015, I kind of decided, hey, you know what we should do is we should start making just short movies just here in the apartment. Because kind of like what I used to do in Hawaii with my sister and my brothers, I used to take the VHS video camera, and because it was a lot cheaper to film on VHS than it is on Super 8. You didn't have to buy stock. I mean, yeah, one VHS cassette, $3, and as opposed to like every Super 8 film, even back in 1980s prices, was still close to $10 a roll, and that was 3 minutes. So you do the math. It's like, yeah, let's shoot on video. So we started doing those. One of our short films that we did was just a parody of a 1960s, 70s sitcom, and we called it That Darn Girlfriend. And Pamela has this whole story of where she came up with the idea for That Darn Girlfriend. And I thought, yeah, that's kind of catchy. It sounds like a 60s sitcom.
Yeah.
And we just did it as a one-off, and all of our friends loved it and say, when's the next episode? And we're like, what? It was just a what? And then we realized, I think we have to do this as a series. And 3 seasons later, it's going strong.
Wow. So where did it air?
It airs on YouTube. So we have a YouTube channel,
okay.
Our YouTube channel with 4 Scorpio Films, 4 Scorpio Productions. So it's youtube.com/4scorpio or @4scorpio. I think YouTube's gotten smart in using the handle, so it's easier to find
So
channels.
it's at Fourscore.
Oh, 4scorpio, yeah, FOUR,
Yeah,
PO,
Scorpio. Okay,
4scorpio, yeah, like the constellation.
got it. Yeah.
And it's called That Darn Girlfriend. It's I have it organized in playlists according to seasons, and you can't mistake the thumbnails. Are very they're pink with little animated characters. So and the little thing that I do is every episode I make the characters wearing the same outfits that we do in the episode. So that's our little trick that we do.
So how do you make those? How does that work?
We started filming with digital camera, and then we got gifted from her sister gifted us with the flip camera, which was so much easier. But the flip camera only does it in the old VGA 640 by 480 resolution, right, which is TV resolution. But nowadays it's kind of, you need better resolution. So now that we have smartphones, you just shoot on your smartphone and you just do a lot of post-production.
Well, and smartphone is so much higher level resolution than 640 by 480.
Yeah.
And televisions are much higher resolution than 640 by 480 today.
Yep.
But they still transmit the audio on FM, so they still have good sound quality.
Yeah, that's the good thing about old shows is generally the audio is pretty good. Even if it was mono, it was very it's very, and I've gotten really big on sound design and sound mixing, and especially with the working on Cyberfighter. It's like I have a real appreciation for the mastery of a lot of the great sound designers like Ben Burt and other people that do just amazing work. And I really love ambient sounds too, which is like those little soft sounds that just help fill in the environment.
So you've referred to Cyberfighter a bunch, so tell us a little bit about kind of how that started and what it's about and so on.
Yeah, so Cyberfighter was an idea that I had many years ago. I was working with another filmmaker, and I was trying to develop a project that we could do together. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to write one from scratch. And I realized that what I could do is go through every martial art, because I wanted to use my martial art skills. And because I auditioned for a lot of martial arts projects, but I never got cast because as a Caucasian guy, I'm a little short and a little like slight. I'm like physique wise, I'm like Bruce Lee as far as height and weight goes, but you know that's where it ends. Yeah, that's where it ends, and they want me a little bigger, and I'm not that tall, so I'd be standing lined up with everybody, and they're like, "Yeah, you look like the guy that we would beat up." So I'm like,
"Yeah, you weren't John Wayne, so yeah."
No. So I'm like, okay, I have to figure out. Well, although, you know, like if I was in the original Karate Kid, I would have had a shot, like playing, you know, opposite Ralph Macchio or something like that. Right. But, and so I went through every plot, you know, okay, so there's either a tournament movie or there's a cop, like, or a revenge, or like Karate Kid, the hero doesn't know karate, then he learns karate, and that's the arc. And I'm like, okay, well, that's been done a million times, but what if he learns it really fast? And at the time, The Matrix had come out. So that inspired me with like, I could probably use the same concept, but whereas in The Matrix, all of that magic happens in The Matrix, and in the real world, you're nobody.
Yeah.
What if you could actually teach somebody how to do any skill, but we're using martial arts as kind of like the beta test for this technology that the military wants to use. Instead of taking soldiers and training them for 13 weeks in boot camp, we'll just put them under for 3 days, program it all, and they learn it through osmosis, but you're hooked up to electrodes, so your muscles are activated in the same sequence, the neurons firing to build those neural pathways to create to where you could actually learn any skill. So that was the whole concept behind it, that I don't really explain all of that in the book or in the screenplay, because that would put the audience to sleep. But that's the science behind it.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is so that was 1999 when I came up with the concept. Finally, you know, it's 2026. You know, they've got Neuralink, they're talking about the neuroplasticity of the brain. And I think even back when I came up with this, they didn't, you know, a lot of neuroscientists were not convinced that the brain was neuroplasticity. They weren't convinced of that yet.
Mm-hmm.
They were still crunching the data and like examining it further. But now it's like everyone's clear that like, yeah, your brain is a lot more plastic than you think. So you can teach an old dog new tricks. It's just, you just got to reprogram it.
Yeah. So that's what you did in Cyberfighter. You taught someone to be a fighter.
Yes. So the hero, great thing about like dramatically speaking, it's like to have the biggest arc, you have to start from a complete zero and go to a complete hero. So at the time, I was doing a lot of temp work. So I'm like, okay, so I'll make him a temp. And I was temping at a defense contractor too. So I'm like, oh, he's temping at a defense contractor, kind of like what I'm doing, but he's a complete klutz. He's got no coordination. He was the perfect test subject, because if they can make him into Jackie Chan, then it'll work on anybody. So, and that's what happens. He goes from being a complete klutz to all of a sudden he's got all this newfound power. And the story, it's like, if you're taking like Blake Snyder's Save the Cat beat sheet, you're like, oh, the fun and games, like he's playing with his new skills. And then he learns that, well, it's not just having the skills. There's a lot that has to do with experience and that kind of knowledge that you can't just learn. You have to have that. You have to put in the hours and put in the reps. You can give somebody the skill, but if they don't know how to use it, they're not really they can be more dangerous. And so there's a little bit of that kind of theme to it. And a lot of themes that I explore too is like, well, how much in control is my hero Brian Baldwin of his own body, of his own agency, when he's being exploited by people that seem like they're doing this to help him out, but no, they're doing it to sell him off to the Pentagon, to deploy him, to use him. So there's a lot of that in it too.
So when did you actually get the first version of Cyberfighter filmed or written, or what did you do first?
First, I had the feature script. Every few years, I would look at it again and do another polish and another rewrite, and then I try to pitch it, try to take it to other producers, try to team up with people that I would be working with in film. So a lot of times as an actor, if I was cast in a project and I really liked the director and the producers and stuff, I'd tell them, hey, this is what I'm working on. Maybe we can team up and stuff. And, everyone seemed interested in it. But, the thing is that you got to learn in Hollywood is everyone already has like their own slate of things that they want to accomplish. And they're not necessarily, it isn't that they don't want to work with you. It's just that they know how hard it is to get something launched off the ground. So there's that. The resistance there is understandably so. It's like it's high risk. It's years and years of development hell. And, I would go back and forth. And then it occurred to me, like this was around 2014. I saw that the horror movie Saw, the Saw franchise, they started by doing a short film. And I'm like, wow. Oh my God, why didn't I think of this? I should do a short film to prove what my vision is and just shoot that, because that's going to be a lot easier to pull off than an entire feature.
Right.
So I went and I said, okay, it's a short film, so I can't use all of, because the story evolved into all of these different layers and things and characters and stuff. So I had the basic premise of, he gets programmed and then he's going to get exploited. So that's what we locked in on. And along with that, I think it was like 2018, I was working on another film and I started realizing, well, I loved to read growing up. I would go to see the movies and then I would read the novelization. So I'm like, yeah, Star Wars novelization, the Alien novelization. Fun fact, my 7th grade, we had to do book reports, where they want the kids to read, classic literature. Well, I read the Alien novelization and my book report, I got an A, but I did a presentation where I had an old like pullover white t-shirt and I cut a hole in it and I had one of my Star Wars figures, the Hammerhead guy, and I had a tomato for the heart and I stuck it underneath. I had one of my friends in class read off like some of the narration and I acted out the chest bursting scene. So it was kind of fun. I had just this writhing in front of the class and then squeeze the tomato to squirt out of my chest, and I had my hand sticking my little action figure out, like looking around, and I mean, I had everybody was in stitches. on that, and that was like in Hawaii. So that was fun. That was funny. I guess that was like that performer was always there. But going back to that, I ended up deciding with Cyberfighter, I'm going to write the novelization first because I got the screenplay. Why not write a book? And self-publishing with Amazon, that had really taken off. And
Right.
I think Amazon had recently changed its rules to make it entry a lot easier.
Right.
It used to be you'd have to go through these self-publishing companies, and it was expensive, and you'd have to buy inventory. And the next thing you know, you've got all these books that you got to give away or sell or try to take somewhere, and it's like, oh, but with Amazon, it's like it's print on demand. So
It's
if
on
you make a
demand,
sale,
right.
they'll print the book then. Yeah. So it was
Right.
like, that was the perfect timing for it.
So when did that book come out?
That book came out in 2019, right before the pandemic. I had finished publishing it and had released that, and I did a book signing actually in February 2020 at the Martial Arts History Museum, and that went really, really great. And at the time, I was gearing up to like, okay, we're going to start going to do the short film, and then COVID happened, and COVID was in the process of happening at the time, and there were a lot of people were kind of like they were doing fist bumps or elbow bumps, and I didn't quite get it because I was so wrapped up in all this production, I wasn't keeping up with what was going. I mean, I had heard about it, but I was like, oh, and then of course that kind of put a wrench in that plans. It kind of like had to push everything off until we got through the pandemic. But the book came out right then.
Wow.
During the pandemic, I took the short script and I decided, okay, well, I know what I can do with the short film. I can make a comic book using the same program that I do for the animation for the short film. So in the short film, when you go into the Cyberfighter program, the virtual reality training program, you're inside an 3D animated world. So it's like a video game.
Right.
And so I was able to quote film all of those scenes before the live action, because it was just a matter of rendering out animation and putting in voiceover and stuff like that with the scratch track to get the mouths to move. And so I had that all done. And that same program, Daz Studio, it's a great, easy, free animation program that you can get it to work for free if you know where to look for all your assets and things without having to pay for anything. I actually used it to also render out my comic book panel. So I published the comic book during the pandemic, and that came out, I think, like early 2021 or something like that. So that's been out for a while as well. So I have the novel, and then I have the comic book,
right?
Which is just the short film. So it's a very short distilled version.
Okay, so you've done the comic. Well, you've done the book, and you've done the comic book. So did you ever get to actually produce this as a short film?
Yes, in fact, I just finished that. And before I was able to do the short film, in addition to all that, I did the audiobook as well, which was perfect to do during the pandemic because we were all locked in, and I could just record it at home, and that's out on Amazon and Audible. So that's the full novelization, which is the full feature-length screenplay. So finally, once COVID started lifting and production started getting back, I decided, okay, now's the time to go. A lot of my friends who are also in production and stuff with this organization that Pamela and I belong to called We Make Movies, and they are this film collective, a lot of independent filmmakers and actors and writers and basically creatives that are looking to basically, we aren't waiting for the gatekeepers to let you in. You're just going to make your project, make the movie that you want to see is one of our mottos, is make the movie that you want to see. So I decided it was time to make the movie that I wanted to see and run an Indiegogo campaign. And I knew how much I needed to raise in order, and for a short film, a lot of people, they do it on whatever they can afford and stuff like that. But I knew to do it properly, I needed to raise at least $20,000 because I needed locations, I needed visual effects, I needed to pay everybody too that worked on it. I couldn't do everything by myself, especially during production. So,
well, and now we also had the writers and actors strikes and everything else that were going on.
Yes, and that's what happened was during the right when I was ready to launch, the Writers Guild strike had been going on, and I was about ready to hit launch on my Indiegogo, and then all of a sudden SAG went out in solidarity. And I talked with my producer, Allison Saraboff, and my wife, Pamela, who's also a producer on this thing. So we did a little talking about it, and we all decided, yeah, it's bad timing. You can't, because people are going to think, why are you trying to do this now when everybody's losing their house? And it's like, well, we're not being, paid for by Warner Brothers or Netflix or anything. We're just doing this on our own. And once it became clear that independent was the way to go, because a lot of notable A-list actors came out in support of independent film, especially like Mark Ruffalo and such. Like, we're saying that, we need to support independent film. And I'm like going, great. That's the messaging that I think will resonate. And that was the time to launch.
So you did.
I did. And it's, in fact, right now I'm just releasing on our YouTube channel, I'm doing a kind of a tutorial series about crowdfunding, and for filmmakers specifically. Basically what I've learned, lessons that I've learned, and that can be helpful to you as a filmmaker in case you're looking to do this. The things that I learned, and the pitfalls that you got to avoid, and the things that really can't guarantee that you're going to be successful, but they're going to help increase your chances.
So when you did Cyberfighter, now you played a lot of the parts and so on in that, didn't you?
I played one of the parts, but as far as wearing many different hats, I did that. Like in post-production, I basically put on everybody's hat who's like in post-production, and I did it all. I edited, I did sound design, I did visual effects, I did color grading, I did the titles and the title animation, I did sound mixing, I did a 5.1 surround sound mix, I also did my own DCP, and it's a lot of work for one person. That's why post-production took about a year, because you go through it, there's a learning curve, you're making mistakes, and then you're fixing the mistakes, and then you're learning from that and going, So now I know when I do it the next time, it's going to be so much smoother, because I know exactly how to do this because I've done it. And that's going to be, I'm going to probably do a series on that as well.
And you didn't have one single piece of cut film that you dropped on the floor?
No, not virtually speaking, yes. Virtual, yes. Yeah, a lot of virtual bins on DaVinci. Yeah, I think I used DaVinci Studio, and it's an incredible all-in-one post-production solution. It's got the editing, it's got the visual effects with Fusion, it's got the color grading. I mean, it was known for color grading, but then when they came out with the DaVinci Resolve, it was like, and I was following this company and this project, this software for a few years to kind of learn how to do it, but you really don't learn how to do this stuff until you have a project to actually work on, because you can do the tutorials, you can do like the sample projects that they give for you, but you're not really going to lock it in until it's your project, because then you're 100% invested in this working.
Well, now to get down to the nitty gritty, it's great that you did all this. Are there any kind of cute bloopers that we ought to be able to see someday?
Yeah, there's always bloopers. And
I hope so.
Yeah, we had a few. Ironically, though, I had done so much pre-production work, storyboarding, animatics, and I used a 3D program called FrameForge, which allows you, if you know your location, you can actually recreate your location in the exact dimensions so that you can play around with camera setups before you even show up on set. So by the time I showed up on set, I was able to tell my DP, Mike Moncachi, I was like, okay, camera's going to be here, and he'd look at my boards and he knew exactly, okay, that'll work because of the setup and the environment. Like, well, you can't really tear a wall out to get this shot here, so where do I got to put the camera to get the angle I want? It's like, well, we need to put like a 35 lens on this instead of like a 50, because you're going to get it a little bit wider. I didn't use too many wide angle lenses because that kind of distorts things, but occasionally. But you get to play around with. I'd find out what lens kit he had, and he had prime lenses, and so I would play around with those in FrameForge to see, like, okay, and I came up with the shots that we used. So we were able to get done quickly. So as a consequence, there really weren't too many bloopers.
Too many bloopers, no.
But there's some really great ones. There is some really great laughable ones that at some point, once the film has been released to the public and everyone has a chance to see it, then I'll show the bloopers because I don't want to spoil anything.
Oh, no. Now, you used the term DP.
Yes.
Which is what?
Director of photography, cinematographer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
On every movie, you have the director, and then you have the DP,
Director of photography, and
yeah. Or as they say in England or UK, it's DOP, director of photography. It's the same thing, but they are the ones that figure out what the director's vision is and how you achieve that with lighting and with camera and setups and all that. And then you have a gaffer who actually does the lighting setup, but a lot of times he's working under the direction of the DP. But on a low budget project like this, we had a very minimal crew. So, everybody the DP did, he had his own kit. He had his own lighting kit and stuff, and he was able to put everything together.
But you wore a lot of hats. What was it like wearing all of those?
It was stressful at times. And the tricky thing is like when you're on set and you're directing and you're acting, I find that wasn't as hard as some people make it seem. I don't know if you can really do that. And it's like, well, I've known a lot of actor directors in Hollywood, and it's like they're working on a much bigger budget movie, but this is a good thing to test to see if I can do it. And I think the key is if you're going to be in your own project that you want to direct, you need to do tons of pre-production work. The more prep that you have, then you're not worrying about things that you haven't thought of because you thought of everything. And so then you can focus on your performance. And the thing too, I think as an actor director, if you need to have worked enough as an actor to where you know how you come across on camera and you have a technique already and then because it's the character I wrote, I know Brian's arc, I know how to play Brian. It is basically a lot of me in him, and a lot of what I've gone through in my life has been, informs him. So I didn't have a problem with I don't know about how to play this character. It's like, no, write somebody you know how to play, and then you're able to direct yourself.
Now, one of the things that we typically hear about when movies are being made is that there are people who perform the stunts. How did that work? So
that's a very good point. We had a wonderful guy, John Crane. He's legendary fight choreographer, stunt coordinator. He wrote this book called Fight Choreography, The Art of Nonverbal Communication. Now, I was playing in a sci-fi movie. I played a mutant. It was like a sci-fi kung fu movie. And the director, a great guy, Jello Parra, who directed this vision of his, and he had this book. And I was like, he says, yeah, you got to read this book. So I read this book, and it's incredible. It's like the level of details that John goes into, from even like old Wild West choreography with John Wayne and Yakima Canute up to like wrestling, like WWE wrestling, which is basically, everyone says wrestling's fake. It's like, no, it's not fake. It's staged. It's live fight scene choreography. It's a live stunt show. You're literally looking at a live stunt show. Mm-hmm. And it has to be that way because you can't get that kind of level of athleticism without it being choreographed. So it just like went into, I had a much more appreciation for what a lot of pro wrestlers do live. And then of course, Kung Fu and all the Kung Fu legends. And John, his career started in the United States with Jet Li did a movie back in the 89 or something called The Master, and John was one of the stunt fighters on it. And in his scene, Jet Li breaks his arm in 3 places, which is kind of cool because there's a great close-up of John getting his arm snapped in 3 locations. So he'd work with Jet Li, and then throughout his journey, he was able to work with or get mentored by Yuen Wu-Ping, who is a legendary Hong Kong choreographer who choreographed a lot of Jackie Chan's work and also did The Matrix. And back when wire fu became popular in Hollywood, they kept calling Yuen Wu-Ping to come out and shoot and stuff like that. But John was able to learn a lot from him. And so I knew I wanted to, I wish I could meet this guy because I want to have him work with me. And, when you put your mind out there, sometimes the wishes can happen, because I had a friend she was a director, and she knew him. So she says, I'll hook you guys up. So she hooked us up. I told him about my idea. he was excited about it. So we had intended to work, and I kind of like got him interested in this in 2014. So for years we were thinking about this, and plus two, he's an actor and a comedian. So I'm like, and John, not just like the stunt guy, I want you to be in the movie because I want you to play Sifu, who's like he's the AI avatar, and then there's a character that you come back into later on. So kind of like, oh, you're the Sifu. So got to use some of his acting chops there. So that's how I got involved with John, and he designed a lot of the fights. We worked on the fights together, and the way he approaches it, what's the storytelling? It's all about the storytelling. It's not all about like the cool moves or let's do a triple. It's like, and we wanted it to be safe too, because this is low budget and we didn't have like wires or too many crash pads. But yeah.
So what were the physical and mental costs or results of doing your own stunts and so on? Because that had to be taxing in some ways.
Yeah, what helps is, so I make sure to stay in as good physical shape as possible. I've been a martial artist for most of my life now. I train regularly, and I also in endurance and strength training and things, and, still practice my forms so I don't lose that skill. And so the more in shape that you are, the easier it is to have the stamina to be able to go multiple takes. And just working with John, and we only had budget for 1 day of rehearsal for each of the fights. So we only had 1 day to rehearse these things. And the more we discuss it, like in your head, you're like, oh, I wish I could do this. And then you realize, well, this is a short film proof of concept. So with like a Hawaii style, it's kind of like a poo-poo platter. It's like, this is just like a sampler of like what the bigger project can have with it.
So when will the short actually be coming out?
The short is complete right now, and it's starting to go to festivals. So it's in the festival submission process at the moment. As soon as it actually has its first premiere, which we have a few places that we're hoping to get, and it's kind of like I tell people, it's like when you're looking for a date for the prom. It's like you want every girl that you ask to think that she's your first choice, and so you don't want to tell who your first choice is until you get your first choice, and if you get your second choice, she's your first choice. So it's kind of like I'm keeping a lot of like where I've submitted to under wraps now, but we're looking for like Oscar qualifying festivals, and just you never know. It's like you might as well shoot for the moon. You might miss and hit the stars.
Well, and either one would be good. So for you, what does an unstoppable mindset mean to you, not just personally, but in reality, in terms of something that you actually have to live under, not just a concept?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say an unstoppable mindset is that you just have to keep going, and you are going to run into various times where you're going to feel like stopping is the only logical and sane solution. I can't tell you how many times I've had to just soldier through so much stress and just trying to figure out, how am I going to do this? How am I going to pull this off? You just have to keep going. You have to believe in yourself, or at least when you don't believe in yourself, just go through the motions of believing in yourself, or make sure that you have people in your corner like Pamela, who's encouraging, and, family, friends, or people in your corner. One of my old acting coaches in San Diego, she had said, the most important thing that you can have in this business is someone in your corner. And that is so true, because without that, I mean, you're on your own, and nobody can really do anything on their own. There's no such thing. I don't think there's such thing as a self-made person. Even the self-made people had somebody that took a risk with them, or gave them a shot, or helped them. I mean, there's so many people that helped me on this project that just I have to acknowledge. And not just all the people that contributed to the campaign, but my cast and my crew that, a lot of them some of my cast, they actually volunteered to help out on the days they weren't cast or working as an actor. They came and helped because they believed in this, or they were so excited about this. And, we wanted to make this a positive experience, and the production was fun. Everybody, between Mike Muncaci, my DP, or and getting to work with William Christopher Ford, who he's a known actor who just like his big thing now is he's in season 6 of Cobra Kai, and I've known him for years, and I've wanted to work with him for years, and it was kind of like at the time we were going to shoot, we had to push his scenes back a few months because he was like, "Oh, I got to tell you, I just got cast in this big project. I can't talk about it, but I understand you probably have to recast me." I'm like, "No, no, no. I want to work with you." And I kind of know, I think I know what project it is because he was in the Karate Kid Part 3. Mm-hmm. So that, and I'm like, and I watched that show, Cobra Kai, religiously all the seasons. I'm like, why aren't they using William yet? Why aren't they using William yet? And then I'm like going, oh, great, they're going to use him. But he was like, I can neither confirm nor deny the rumors. I'm like, okay, I know. So needless to say, when we wrapped up, we shot it before he could actually talk about it still. We finally got to work with it. But then finally, when his season came out, it was so ironic. They finally dropped and he was able to post it on social. And then I immediately go to Netflix on the same computer that I'm cutting our fight scene. And I was literally, I was in the middle of cutting our fight scene and I stopped to watch his episode. I'm like, oh my God, this is so surreal. I'm literally watching, there's William and he's in my fight scene too. So it was kind of cool.
So I figured that Pamela was in your corner. Was there any time that she was kind of thinking of giving up and that it isn't going anywhere, or was she really the mainstay that just kept you going and never really lost faith?
Well, I would say, Pamela and I both feel the same amount of stress a lot. And so she always says, like, she's had to live with this as long as I've had to live with this. And for her, it's scarier because she doesn't know what I know in my head. Mm-hmm. And so when I run into trouble, she worries that that's it. I can't figure this out. But I'm like, no, I'll figure it out. I always do. I've always been thrown in the deep water and I thrash around a little bit until I figure out how to tread water and then eventually I can swim. But so it's been that kind of process. But with her, she's always had this steadfastness of like this belief. In fact, I say she's a lot more spiritual than I am. So she'll have more of a spiritual connection to things. Like I have to have faith that it'll all work out, that, our dads who have passed away are looking out for us, or the God's looking out for us and stuff like that. And I'm more practical, like, okay, well, my brain or this body's got to actually do the actions or nothing's going to happen. So yeah. I think we're a good balance that way.
I know that when Karen was alive, we had our challenges in one way or another, but what usually happened was when one of us was down, the other one of us wasn't. It was very rare that both of us were frustrated at the same time. But even when that happened, we knew we had to work through it and did. And so I appreciate exactly what you're saying, because it's all about you've got somebody in your corner. You've got somebody who mentally is going to do what they can to help. And even if they're frustrated, you can work through it.
Yeah, that's so true. It's kind of like, as long as, if you both, our relationship is so strong that we both love each other so much that it's like, it doesn't matter what we're going through. Yeah. And it doesn't matter, whatever the meltdown is or however you want, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of like you will step back, take a breath. And it's like, we always come back and we're always in love and kind of laugh about it later. And we know that we got through it. And I think once I was able to render out the master of the film and finish the DCP and like, it's done. I've got no more work on it. It's kind of exciting now to see where it's going to go.
Do you guys have any kids?
We do not have children. We used to have a cat. In fact, our cat Claude, I had got him a week before I met Pamela. So he was a rescue that a friend, he needed a home, and I'd always had cats growing up, so I'm kind of a cat guy. Yeah. And so he became like our little child energy and stuff like that. But we do have nieces and nephews, and they have children now. So we have toddlers in our life now. They're not ours. And the great thing is, it's like we can have fun with them and stuff like that, but we don't have the responsibility. So
send them home at the end of the day.
Yeah. We don't have to worry about sending them to college.
Too. That's what we did too. We had nieces and nephews, and we could ship them out at the end of the day, or A couple of times we threatened to sell them to the gypsies, but that was okay. But
Yeah, no,
yeah, it
yeah,
worked
but
out well.
our nieces and nephews who are parents, they're great with their kids. They're just so wonderful. It's like kind of like, well, you don't need me to be the parent. You guys are doing a good job
Well,
as it
now
is.
our nieces and nephews have kids who have their own kids, so
Yep.
we've gone through several generations. But it's cool that way. So we enjoy it. Well, what was it like with, and what is it like with your family? You're the only one that went into this kind of business, and everybody else went into more traditional things. How does that work for you, and how does that work for them?
Yeah, it's it's interesting. As a kid, my parents were always worried about me taking this path because they're like, "Well, you don't have any connections, you don't know anybody." And my parents are both Vietnam vets. My mom was a Navy nurse. My dad was a lifetime Navy career officer. But the rule was back then when my mom got pregnant with me, I'm the eldest, I'm the firstborn. She had to leave the Navy. So and of course now that doesn't matter, but back then that was the rule. So my mom raised five of us, and it was kind of like I always joke the family business was the military because my one brother, he's a captain in the Coast Guard now, and then that was my brother who lives with my mom. He's an engineer who works with the Navy, so he's a DoD civilian. My sister married a Marine who we knew him in Hawaii, so kind of like he took her to her prom, and so they ended up getting married. So the military is a big part of my family, and
There you
it's
go.
like if I wasn't doing this, that's probably where I would go because don't really I understand the military life so well, the structure, just the way it is, that I could easily fall back into that. But yeah, but I always wanted to do this, and I was figuring, well, you just got to do it. It's like everybody who made it in Hollywood. Yeah, a lot of people they have family who can help them, but somebody started somewhere. So it's like going, I guess that's got to be me. So
There you go. So where does AI fit into all this? I know when the writer strike was going on and SAG joined and all that, there was a lot of discussion about AI and all that. Where does AI fit into the whole business of doing film production and creating programming today?
I would say AI, everyone says anybody who's actually worked with it like me will say it's a mixed bag. On the
Yeah.
one hand, you do have the danger of where it's going to completely disrupt. It's already disrupted the creative process. It's already disrupted the studios. And every time you hear about some more bad news coming out, like, oh, they just did that Tom Cruise rooftop fight with him and Brad Pitt. Oh, it's over. It's like, well, no, it's not over. It's just that's the thing that's over is like, well, now anybody can actually do that. But is anybody going to want to pay money to buy a ticket to see that? I don't think you're going to have that. But
Hmm.
what AI is very helpful for, I use the chatbots a lot to help me plan strategies or to help run through technical. A lot of my technical help on Cyberfighter with DaVinci was done through chatbots helping me like, look, I'm trying to do this. I'm working in DaVinci 19.4.1. How do I do da da da? And I would put out the parameters and then it would spit it back. You
Yeah.
do this. A lot of times it was like telling me stuff that wasn't right. I said, you're wrong. You're wrong. I'm doing that. And eventually you get to that. But even that, it's quicker than Googling it or going through message boards or
It
actually
gives you
trying to
ideas.
contact.
It
Yeah,
gives
it
you
gives you
ideas.
ideas. Yeah,
or
that's what
or
I
it
find it.
stimulates you to get ideas. But and I agree. I think that that's where AI is going to help. I agree. I just don't think that anyone's going to want to pay,
No.
especially if they know it. They're not going to want to pay to see AI. That's not what they want. But it it is a great tool to help with stimulating ideas and helping you move some things along. But it still has to be your work, and I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's like when Photoshop first came out, everyone was talking about it's the end of photography. It's
Yeah.
like
Well. Yeah.
that didn't happen. That photographers use it now because it's like, and I
Sure.
can tell you, AI, DaVinci has AI tools like, for example, their voice isolation. So our first day of shooting, there was a protest going on outside, and we were shooting at Los Angeles Center Studios at the
Mm.
iconic tower building on the Sky Bridges, which was like I wanted to shoot there for years, and I finally
Yeah.
made that happen. And we got helicopters. And I'm like, oh my God, there's helicopters. And my sound guy, Alex Anakin, he's a great guy. He's like, oh, Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
AI. I'm like, what? Huh? He's like, yeah, yeah. So by the time I was in post, I see like the DaVinci release that I got. I was like, I got the update and it's like, what's this voice isolation? I click it and all of a sudden, all the background noise is gone. It's
Gone.
just the voice, and
We
then you
did
just
a
layer in, yeah. And so I
we
was like, wow.
we did a podcast a few years ago. Somebody was doing it from a coffee shop, and their noise cancellation microphone battery died about 3/4 of the way through, and suddenly we heard everything in the coffee shop.
Oh,
And the same sort of thing. We ran it through a processor and literally got rid of everything except the person's voice. It was great.
yeah. It's the thing is, it's like if you have noise pollution that is vocal, it's like you can't because that lives in the same frequency.
Right.
It's everything your noise floor, and then you put a limiter or you put all these little post production tools that the AI can just help with so much, and even with visual effects. So when you're doing green screen and we were using a moving camera, we have tracking markers on the walls or tracking things on the floor that I needed to make sure that would get rid of, but you couldn't be green because it would get keyed out and the software wouldn't be able to read it.
Yeah.
So I had to garbage mat all that. Well, traditionally you would have to manually go frame by frame and rotoscope it all out. But there's this wonderful tool called Magic Mask where you paint, you just touch what you want to keep and you let the machine do it. And then, you tweak it here and there because it's never 100% perfect. And then you just plug it in and it's gone. I'm like, that saved me months and months of roto work.
Which is another example of where AI can be helpful.
Yep.
So how has the film or the whole entertainment industry changed since you came to Hollywood?
When I came to Hollywood, people were still shooting on film. Headshots were black and white. Show fax, you still got your sides over a fax machine. I had a pager, and in the 90s, and yeah, I had hair too. But the color photos were the first thing that kind of like changed stuff, and then everything became online casting. And after that, then at the time, like I think late 90s is when digital film started to show up. I think I was working on a film and they were shooting on digital on a Canon XL1, the very first generation of cameras. Yeah. And those used the digital video cassettes, those little micro cassettes. But I'd look at the monitor on Video Village and I'm like, oh my God, this looks like film. This doesn't look like video. And I was like, wow, this is so great. And I've shot on every format from VHS to Super 8 to even 35 millimeter. Did a film on 35 millimeter, which was, it looks beautiful, but when you're on set, you're waiting around for a long time, and then they're very, very picky about how, when you're shooting, you can't just afford to burn film. It's just like, you're rolling the magazine, not just the magazine, but the cost of stock, even if you're using raw ends. But I've lived through the transition of film to video. And when I was developing Cyber Fighter for years, it was like, I would run the budget. I would create my own budgets and I would base the budget on, okay, well, you're going to have to do a telecine, so that you can cut on an Avid, and then you're going to want to be able to put that output back to film because movie theaters still project film, and that would, the cost was in the millions. And now all of a sudden it's like, no, TCP, it's like basically what I did on Cyber Fighter for $20,000. It's like, that can put me in a multiplex. Like I could literally screen this movie at the Grauman's Chinese Theater on the big screen.
So nowadays when filming is going on and so on, do they still use the slate and click it and then say speed?
Yes, we still do that.
Great.
we still love to do that.
Remember that.
Yeah, and what's funny is as a kid, I never understood why, and especially when you're recording on video, you don't need to do that. But I always would do it because I wanted to be just like
synchronized.
Synchronized. Yeah. So, but then I learned, that's what that's for. And then when you do, but what's great now is then even with DaVinci, so we have a separate sound recorder, but then we use the camera's audio as a scratch track. So that way the camera's got audio. You bring that into your editing software, and if it's DaVinci, you just right click on your audio track, make sure you log everything so you know what scene, what take, so you match it up, and then you match them up, and then you right click and say synchronize using waveform. Boom. You don't have to go in and manually find that, the sticks hitting and then move it to, the computer does it And that saved me a lot of time too. So
I'll
again, thank you
bet.
AI for that. Yeah.
With all the movies and so on that you've done, have you done any that we would have probably traditionally seen?
I've not worked most of the stuff that I've done doesn't really make it to definitely not the big screen, although I did work many years ago in Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor, which was that was
Mm.
fun. And when I got cast in that, I was one of Doolittle's raiders, and so I got to go down to El Toro and got to like dress up like the
Ah,
World War II. And
yeah.
we had B-24, B-25s, and Alec Baldwin actually climbed into one with the stunt pilots and actually flew. And I'm like, wow, Alec, you got a lot of guts, because that thing was spewing smoke out. And at the time, this is like the year 2000, and I'm like, is that thing going to get airborne? But you know, they're beautiful. It was just amazing.
They know what
I
they're
wish
doing.
that I would have gotten cast sooner when they could have flown me back to Ford Island, because they shot a lot of that
Yeah,
on Ford Island
on
where I
Ford
grew
Island,
up.
right.
So I was like, but yeah, that's the closest I come to like the big screen. And then a lot of independent films that have been shown on a big screen but never got wide distribution.
Well, we're looking forward to Cyber Fighter coming out, and I'm going to now have to go find the Audible book.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah. It was fun to do that and to do all of the characters and all the voices. One of my little hobbies and things that I do on the side, and the side that's also gotten me some work too with voiceovers. I do celebrity impressions, so I do a lot
Oh,
of character voices and impressions.
there you go. What's your favorite?
My favorite, okay, one of my favorites, then, and this one actually got me into this one podcast, but it's one of my favorite characters to do, of course, is Christopher Lloyd. And if you want to do Doc Brown, you got to talk very fast. But then if you want to do Jim from Taxi, you slow him down. You know, that guy. And
I always love to say when a lot of times when I'm doing speeches, I talk about the fact that I have a master's degree in physics, but the difference between me and Doc Brown is that unlike Doc Brown, I'm not dumb enough to go to a terrorist to try to get fissionable material.
exactly,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, plutonium. Yeah, there's better fissionable material that you can, yeah, use than that.
There's
But
better
it
ways
worked
to
for
get
the,
it than going to a
yeah.
bad guy.
But you
So,
wouldn't have had such an exciting movie if they would have been
oh,
logical
that's
about
true. That's true.
it.
Well, if people want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Well, I have my website is williamjosephhill.com. You can also find me on Facebook, especially like the Cyber Fighter movie group, which if you look at Cyber Fighter movie, and then forscorpio.com, FOUR Scorpio.com. That's the production company's website. I'm also on Instagram as at William Joseph Hill. I'm also like YouTube, our YouTube channel. That I'm most active. And it's funny, is like YouTube is actually social media. So yeah, we're most active on YouTube, which is at For Scorpio. And
So it's at Fourscore PO, right?
yeah, For Scorpio, yeah.
PO or okay, Sports Scorpio. Okay, great.
And you can get my books are on Amazon. So you look up Cyber Fighter
Yep.
on Amazon, and I think that'll direct you
I'm
right to the Amazon page.
yeah, I'm going to the Audible page and I'll get it when we're
Oh,
done
thank
here.
you. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
looking forward to it. Well, I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank all of you out there who are with us today. This has been a lot of fun, learned a lot, and I think had a great conversation. So thank you very much for being here wherever you are. If you'd like to reach out to me, in addition to reaching out to William, love to hear from you. Please email me at speaker, SPEAKER, at Michael Hingson, MICHAELHINGSON.com, speaker at michaelhingson.com. And if you know anyone who you think ought to be a guest on Unstoppable Mindset, and William, you included, if you know anyone who ought to be a guest, love a mutual introduction, love to meet them. We're always looking for people to come on and tell their story. So whoever you are, and if you know anyone, please let us know. But William, again, I want to thank you for being here. This has absolutely been fun.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed this a lot.
If you're ready to go deeper into the ideas that shape how we see ourselves and others, I have a free gift for you. Head over to michaelhingson.com and download my free ebook, Blinded by Fear. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep choosing to live with an unstoppable mindset.